We are now into part 3 of this tutorial. What we're going to do now? Well, now we're going to do what's actually fun. Depending who you are, you might think it's fun, maybe you don't think it is fun. In this next part, we will be animating the scene, the thing you all were hoping to get to. Now we're here. I'm going to show you how you can move these limbs to make a scene. I'm going to show you how to keyframe, which is essentially the same thing as taking a photo in a stop motion setting. So, but we start doing that, shall we? What we're going to do, I'm going to just get off into solid mode here. We're going to export, we're going to append, which is the term that means transferring stuff in between blend files. We will be appending this minifigure into the other file that we already created. So let's open up the blend file of our original scene, that set that we had built in Mechabricks, and obviously save this before you do that. Now, before you go back to the other scene, I want you to go over here to the outliner, and make sure that all of your elements of the rig and the parts of your character, all the different sections, are inside of one collection. Sometimes when you make click the button for rigging, it'll put this into a separate collection. So now there's 2 folders here. You just have to make sure that it goes inside of one singular folder, and you name this to something that you know. I'm naming this Clone Trooper because this is the Clone Trooper. I usually name this to whatever character this is, and inside of this folder I have the rig and every single one of the parts. So now I'm going to go open up the original scene to which we will append this character into. Now we're back into our original scene. We're going to append a character into this scene, and that's simply by going File, Append, and find your blend file. In my case, it's 313th Trooper. Double click that. And this is all of the elements inside of that blend. We're going to go down to Collection, which is those folders that I was just talking about. Double click that. And this is the Clone Trooper collection. This has all of these collections inside of this one. So we're going to double click this, which is the same thing as clicking Append. And now the character is in the scene. I'm going to turn back on my overlay so I can see the rig. And there he is. Before you get all excited and start moving him around, I will say you cannot move this rig in object mode. You could go over here and unlock him and then move him, but do not unlock and move him in object mode. What you're going to do to move him around in the scene is to go click on the rig, then go into pose mode. A lot of times the master bone is hidden because it'll be underneath the set, but you just got to look for it and find it. If you can't find it, here's mine. Just raise him up a bit so he's floor level with the floor. Move him down. Let's get him into the scene. If you can't find him, let's say he's like deep in the scene, and there's no way you can see it, even if you go underneath, what you can do is temporarily go over here to the object data properties. In this case, it's an armature, and just go down to viewport display and turn on in front, which means no matter what, you can see every single bone, which gets a little messy, so I tend to leave that off as much as I possibly can. But in this case, I need to see the bone, so I'm going to raise him to see until the legs are just above the ground, and then that's good. I'll turn in front back off, and now everything's much more clean. The next thing I will do is I'm going to put him in his chair, because that's the scene that I want to make. I want to have him talking in the chair, and I might make the chair swivel as well, and I can show you how to do that. So let's put him in the chair. That's pretty simple. I'm going to just move him closer to the chair, rotate him so he's aligned with the chair. What I'm doing here is I'm just clicking R and then Z, which is the axis that I want to be rotating him on. And I can click that numpad period button, which is the same as frame selected, to just select that as now my new pivot point of the viewport, which makes things a little bit easier. So I'm going to raise him up a bit, rotate him a bit, just get him aligned with the chair. And then I'm going to raise the legs. You'll notice that the legs are actually locked and they can't go upwards, which is a little bit annoying sometimes, but a lot of times it's very important that you keep it locked. You could push it super far out and it will go, but I just want them to be right here upwards a little bit so that the legs are lying flat. So I'll unlock the Z location. Don't unlock anything else, and then I can just move them upwards like that. The reason that they are locked is because for walk cycles, it's very useful to have them lay flat on the ground in an IK bone setup. So I'll also unlock the Z bone and lift him up, so now they're both lying flat, and I'll just push the master bone so he moves back a bit down. He's pretty close. I'll tilt his torso back a little bit avoid the clipping with this chair. So now he's on the chair. And I can go to my camera view again by clicking the numpad 0, or just going view camera, active camera like that. This is our first view. I want him to start off, this is the scene that I'm going to create. He's going to be starting off facing his little computer setup, and he's going to swivel around in his chair and start talking to the camera. So I want him to be facing the wall first. So let's just rotate everything so it's facing the wall. But if I were to rotate him, the chair doesn't follow, and I kind of want to just be able to move the chair and he kind of follows, just like how in real life you can move your chair and your whole body follows. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to create an empty that controls the rotation of this chair. So I'm going to get out of object mode. I'm going to make a new collection for organizational purposes. I think they made a new collection in here. Yeah, I just want to move that out. I'll rename this chair. I'll just leave it as chair actually. Highlight both objects in the chair, click M to move it. I'll move it to chair. Now they're both in here. I'm going to select this guy. Since he is the point of rotation, the axis of rotation, I'll create the empty originating from that origin point. And then you got to go Shift S to select, to move your cursor to that origin point. So then when you go Shift A and you add a new empty, it is starting from that point. And I'm just going to scale him to proportion. And you can get really customized with the shape of your empty, but it doesn't necessarily matter. What I want to do now is select both of the chair objects and then select the empty last because I'm parenting them to the empty. Do Control P to object, keep transform. And now they are parented so that when I move the chair, move the empty, the whole chair moves as well. But now obviously we still don't have the body moving along with the chair. To make the whole body move along with the chair, we're simply going to parent this master bone to that empty as well, because if the empty moves and then the master bone also moves, then everything will move together. For a bone, it works a little bit differently. We're just going to go down to these constraints here, and we're going to go add bone constraint. We're going to add the child of constraint. We're going to set the target to the empty. Sometimes it'll go all weird, and you just click set inverse, and it'll reset itself. So now, if we go back to object mode, we rotate the empty, everything rotates. And the beauty of using the child of constraint as opposed to just doing Control P is you can also change the influence, so you can turn it off and on in the middle of your scene. Let's say he wants to get off and walk and the chair swings around behind him. It would get all messy if the chair was still parented to him, and it would just be a bit of a disaster. So in this case, we can easily just undo the influence and keep animating. I'm going to import the audio file, the voiceover audio file that I will use to animate the scene with. I'm going to drop down a new window, change this to the video sequencer. To then import my sound, just go add sound, add my little commercial here, put it in.
As a clone trooper, it's my duty to protect the Republic.
I want to be able to see the waveform, especially when you're doing lip sync. It's useful to turn on the waveform. So in this case, I'll show you how. You just go to the click N to open up this sidebar, click display waveform, and now you can kind of time it with your thing.
As a clone trooper,
I'm going to move this a little bit so it starts immediately. All right, now let's animate. So I'm going to drop this down because you don't really need to see this as much anymore. You can pull it up if you want to see it more detailed. Another thing you can do is you can like bring this down so that it's super thick, so that when you bring it back up, bam, you can see it in really good detail. So I can drop that and still see it. And then I'm going to bring this down a little bit and change it to the dope sheet. And this is the key to animating the dope sheet. I'm going to start the animation simply by opening up the armature in pose mode. I can insert keyframes from this point, insert keyframe at another point, and the computer will do the interpolation in between. And the more detailed you go, just like in stop motion, the more FPS that you manually do, the better it will look. I'm going to turn on lock object mode so I can easily switch back and forth to this. I'm just going to rotate this so he's facing straight, and he's going to start kind of leaning over a bit. I'm going to see it a little bit better here. This wall is quite annoying actually. Whatever, we'll deal with it. He's big working on his Republic duties. I want him to do a full swing of the chair, point at the camera, and start talking. He's going to do a big chest puff as a clone trooper. So let's do that. First, we're going to worry about the actual rotation of the chair. I'm going to insert keyframe at 1 by clicking I, actually at 0, I, location and rotation. And then I'm going to move forward let's say I want this to take 11 frames. I'll rotate Z and go this direction. Now he's facing straight. Insert location, rotation. Now if I go back to 0, I'll move this from the start so it's at 0. Play it.
As a clone trooper.
Boom, just like that. And it's all about that. Let's say I wanted to make him lean up. I'll insert keyframe at the start.
As a
make him lean back. Insert keyframe at the start. The eye is like taking a photo on your camera if you're doing stop motion.
As a clone trooper.
Boom. And you can actually speed this up if you go down to this button here, which is auto keying, which means no matter when you move him, it will automatically insert a keyframe. You don't have to click I anymore, but you just have to specify what kind of keyframe you want it to automatically set. In our case, we're just going to do location, rotation, and scale. Now I'll start fully animating.
As a clone trooper.
So say I wanted his torso to come back down. I'll just rotate it back down. As you can see, it automatically set us a keyframe.
As a clone trooper.
Just like that. Or let's say I wanted to have over rotate and then kind of come back. So we'll set this to rotate just a little bit more. Let's say we wanted it to kind of be tilted a little bit, you know.
As a clone trooper.
And we'll drop this back. 0, 0. And then just kind of rotate him a little bit more like that.
As a clone trooper. I
want to have his head kind of start the rotation. So he's, before anything else, the head kind of leads the motion. So I'll make him move his head quite quickly.
As a
so that by the time he's even like here, it's already straight, and you obviously don't want him to over rotate, so I'll keep adjusting that. Every single time it's inserting a keyframe automatically. Now he's looking straight at us. Boom. I'll play with his arms, back arm kind of initiating the movement. I like that. Let's say I wanted to have it go a little bit out of socket though, add some flair. Let's say around here, it's like a little bit out, you know. I like the way that looks. Oh, I forgot to insert a keyframe at the beginning, so now look at that. I want it to kind of go back to being in the socket, and instead of like trying to do it yourself, you can actually go Alt-R, which reverts it back to its original thing. And if you had moved it, you can go Alt-G to move it back. Alt-R for reset rotation, Alt-G for reset transformation. And this is kind of where he's going to be kind of puffing his chest. Kind of bring that out a little bit.
Clone trooper.
Obviously, try to avoid clipping as much as possible. Looks pretty good to me.
As a clone trooper.
I'm just kind of like animating it based off what he says.
It's my duty.
So I'm just gonna kind of play around with how you animate.
Trooper.
There's so many different things you can do, and the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. But it's all about that simple principle of point A to point B, the computer interpolating that movement. The more you interpolate in between, the more detailed it will get. So now that I've put that, it goes out and then back in. So it's all about those little keyframes, and it's slightly easier than animating stop motion because of the fact that it interpolates it for you. But at the same time, you have to be careful because you can have animations that end up looking overly interpolated. So I'm just gonna kind of fast forward this video as I animate the rest of this minute 40 long audio file. Alright, and so now if I want to switch cameras to the second camera I have set up, which is the side angle over here, what you have to do is first set that first camera to start at the beginning by doing Control, so click on the camera, then do Control B, do Control B over the dope sheet when your mouse is over the dope sheet, which binds the camera to that frame. And then I'm gonna scroll to where I want it to cut, just like when you make an edit. And
all costs.
I'm gonna do it right here. Click on the second camera, and then do Control B again. And now it makes essentially what is the equivalent to a cut. So now if I go into my camera view and I play
Look
it,
at all costs. And at this digital age.
and then it's made the cut. My angle is pretty crappy, so I'll move this. Lock camera to view, move this around, and it's still clipping, so I'm gonna raise that clipping factor, and I'm gonna have him look to the camera.
Protect the Republic at all costs.
And if you notice that it defaults to 250 frames, so when I play it and it hits 250 frames,
Radios. As a
it reverts back to the start. So to fix that, you just extend that. It's going to extend it to some ridiculous value, and I can adjust the ending later when we render it out. Click on the first camera, back, and I'm going to do a big crash zoom right here. So
from enemy separatist radios.
now I'm going to move this actually a little bit further up.
This could never track me now.
It's going to be never track me now, and it's going to zoom into his face. So to do that, I can just play with the focal length. I could do a dolly, which would literally move the camera in, or I could zoom in with the focal length. In this case, I want it to be like an optical zoom as if it was a real camera, so I'm going to zoom in with the focal length, not the camera. So I'm going to insert a keyframe on the camera. I'm not really sure why that didn't work. Cameras aren't. So the reason it didn't work is because when we did, in the last tutorial, when we did the transformation, we did these restriction toggles to make it unselectable, so you have to just make it so that they are selectable again. So now I can click on it and it will allow me to make modifications. So we're going to insert keyframe on the focal length at 50 millimeters right now, and we'll do a ridiculous 200 millimeter zoom, and I want it to be quite faster than that, so
It never tracked me now.
that's pretty good. So obviously it's not even on him right now, so I'm just going to rotate that. So I have to insert, so I've already done that, but I have to insert a keyframe for these transformations so that when I go here, I can adjust it. Sorry, that's the location. Rotate this up.
This could never track me now.
And that doesn't really look very good, does it? So we're going to trick the shot. Oh, that's pretty good. It's good enough.
Track me now. Could never track me now.
So I was going to do a little move forward. And a cool trick I like to do, I don't really like when you can see so far outside of the camera. So I'm just going to click on the camera and go back down to camera settings. And there's a little setting if you under viewport display, passer part out. I have no idea how it's pronounced, but if you just turn this all the way up, that's the other camera. So if I turn it all the way up, it's just black, and I kind of like that you can, this is just the frame that I can see, and I don't really want to see anything else. I'm going to zoom out and do a little tilt up to then for him to raise his arms to show the NordVPN logo. So we're going to start the zoom out once again. So keyframe to 200
NordVPN.
to 50.
Thanks to NordVPN.
And then we're going to do a little tilt. I'm going to do X, X, X. Tilt this up. I'm going to make it so that the tilt happens after it starts zooming. So I'm going to open more details here. Those are the rotation. It's only the X rotation. So I'm just going to drag this to happen later.
Thanks to NordVPN.
So we're going to go back and we're going to animate some arms now. And here's an example of when the interpolation does not work. So as you can see, I have his arm set for point A here, point B here, and I just want him to put his arm down. But as you can see, if I go to the middle, he goes through himself as he brings his arm down, and I don't want that, obviously. So I'm just going to go to that keyframe and move it out, and then it will reinterpolate based on that, and you are great to go. This wall is really bugging me, so I'm actually going to turn it off. So I'm going to go to orthographic mode here. I'm going to select the wall, select these guys as well, and I'll just move them to a new collection called side wall, and I'll just turn that off so it's not in the way anymore. Future me back again with another error that I've come across. So as he's spinning his chair around, let's say we want to make his chair keep spinning as he's getting off. Do like a bunch of circles as because he got off super fast. But we do that and he spins too. So this is a problem, but we don't want him to spin anymore. So if we go back to that child of constraint that we made, and let's say we turned it off. Now he moves again. You could keyframe it here, let's say, right where he's about to get off. You could keyframe the influence, next frame, drop it to 0, and then just rotate him back to where he was, which would work. But there's a better way. So let's undo that. I don't use the child of constraint that much if I want to have something be parented on and off because of this reason. I use this. It's an add-on called Dynamic Parent, which still uses the child of constraint, but there's some extra coding in here that allows it to stay in its place after you've disabled the parent, which is really good. It's really good for when he leans down to pick things up and you want it to not be moving at the same time, and then he grabs it, it is moving, and then let's say he throws it and it's not moving with him anymore. So we're going to go all the way back to the very beginning. When he first spins the chair around, we're actually going to delete this dynamic parent. Go to frame 0, delete the dynamic parent, and he shifts a little bit, which is fine. We just have to rotate him back into the seat of the chair, and he also shifted a little bit, so just shift him overwards. And then it works the opposite way of normal parenting. You have to select the parent and then the child. So we select the empty and then the child, click create, and now he will move with the chair, which is exactly what we want. So now we have that parent reset, and he will follow the thing for the rest of the animation. But as you can see, because of that keyframe, he's slowly shifting back. So I'm just going to delete these. Ideally, you do this before you use dynamic parent in the first place. And now if we want the chair to spin, as soon as we get here, simply click on this and click disable. Now also delete that second keyframe, do this before. And now if you move ahead, I can rotate this freely and he doesn't get affected. So if we reanimate this again,
I know my online.
I can keep rotating this now because it's no longer parented. The chair spinning, dynamic parent. Alright, now that he's on the ground, let's start moving his feet to start walking. So we'll start with this left foot. As soon as he lands, insert that keyframe. I'm going to go 2 keyframes forward to move his foot upwards. I like to kind of put him a little bit on his toes. And this is why I like to go back and lock the legs. So you see the leg is up in the air here. When it's up in the air, it kind of messes with the IK setup. So if I just drop this down to 0 again, and I'm going to lock it, same for the other one, which is already at 0, so I'll just lock them for now. It doesn't change what we've already done, it just means I can't move them again. So let's start the walk, push it forward, push it a little bit more forward. Then I'm going to skip forward about 7 frames, 6 or 7. Put him on the ground, and then go to the middle and raise him up.
Online activity.
And you just kind of repeat this process over and over again. And I'm going to go back 1 frame so that he starts pushing his new foot forward as he is stepping. 1, 2, push it forward. Look where I'm seeing, and then 7 frames forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Put him on the ground. Go back to the middle so he raises him up so he's not clipping on the floor. You can also go into this mode, which is like a completely flat mode. Doesn't have any perspective, which helps a lot with animating sometimes, especially walk cycles.
My online activity.
The cool thing about using Blender is you can only focus on one thing at a time. I can only do the legs and then do everything else later. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Online activity is private and secure.
So if you wanted to, let's say, repeat the cycle for an unlimited amount of time without having to actually animate it, you can copy and paste keyframes, but there's a specific way you have to do it. And we have to repeat the cycle starting from this pose where he's kind of in between. And so if you select those 3 bones, you insert a keyframe, and then you go to the next point where it's the exact same pose with the left foot forward, which is here. I can insert a keyframe for all 3 of them in the middle, and let's just say I delete everything I've done past that point because I want to just copy and paste it, right? So now he just does that cycle.
Online
bam,
activity
bam,
is
bam.
private.
We're just going to be copying and pasting it. So let's say I selected that section and I did Shift D and I moved them forward. Here's what would happen. Everything gets all wonky and then it restarts. It's because this section here. So what we can do to fix that is also insert a keyframe for both of them right before they duplicate, because I moved this directly on top of the ending of the last frame. So let's undo that. And we're going to go to the end and go 1 frame back, select all 3, and insert keyframe. So now there's like a safety. So if I then select everything, Shift D, go to the end, bam.
Activity is private and secure.
So now he's going forever. But we have obviously one problem. He's going back to where he started. He's reverting.
Activity is private and secure.
We don't really want that. I'm going to copy and paste it one more time. And I'm going to show you how to make it so he keeps going forward. You could, one easy fix you could do is simply keyframe the master bone. Use this as a guide. Put it at the toe. Move it forward. And once it moves back, move it forward again. So that he starts there.
He is private and
Now he's going forward, and then do that again, which doesn't take that much time. But if you want to speed that up even more, is use one of these buttons over here to make it do it for you. If you go to the frame right before he reverts, go to the frame he reverts, go back one. Then go over here and click Snap Master Bone.
secure.
Does it for you. Obviously, it's a little bit buggy. He didn't go to the exact same spot that he was at. It's pretty close though, so we can just move him back slightly. So sometimes it's a little bit easier to just do it the normal way, but if you're trying to speed animate for some reason, you can use this button. But this button above it, the reset master bone, is even more important than the snap master bone, and you'll be using it way more often. Okay, so let's say we wanted him to stop walking here and turn around. If we wanted him to turn around, we will notice that the master bone is no longer directly beneath his feet, which is a bit of a problem, because if we wanted to rotate that, he's not rotating in the middle anymore like he would have been here. So how can we get it so that this is back underneath this without that part also moving forward? That to move forward and that to move back. Well, that's what this button, Reset Master Bone, does. If you want it to reset, simply click this button and boom. Like magic, the rig now resets to directly underneath his body. And now we can use the pivot tool, if you like, to make him turn around, do a slight little pivot. And let's say you wanted to pivot on the other foot, just click the left. It drops down a bit, but if you just raise it up, it gets a little glitchy. But if you always use the Reset Master Bone, it will fix itself. And when he gets here, we can reset the bone again. So he's done all this wild stuff.
That's more important than ever.
And we can always have the rig come back to square one without changing where he is in the space. And then this accessory snapping tool is, you could use it to snap a object to his hand to get it exactly in his hand. You just click both of them, click the left hand tool. I'll also link the Epic Fig Rig tutorial, which goes more in depth on the actual rig itself. This is just showing the process of my animation workflow. And we're just going to go through, just like stop motion, do his arms and his legs. Or sorry, his arms and his torso. We also have this cool little rocker bone, which lets us rock the body back and forth. So as he does this stupid little wobble thing, I'm going to make him do that. Another quick tip, I want his arms to kind of like flop against the side of his torso.
Well, I can't find any.
But the typical interpolation mode of Blender is the Bezier interpolation mode, which is not exactly what we want, because we don't want it to slow down as it hits his chest. We want it to be hitting his chest at full speed so it kind of bounces off, right? What I can quickly do to change that is that instead of making it slow down, if I click V and just change this to vector, they don't slow down anymore.
Well, I can't find
they
any.
they just immediately stop. There's no easing in and easing out. It just stops. Then I just kind of push them out again for that bounce, and then I'll copy this and paste it.
Well, I can't find any reason.
So after hours, days, years of animating your scene, you have completed, and it's a work of art. Congratulations. All you need to do now is render it out, which is frustratingly long, and I'm going to show you the best way to do it in the next episode, which will be very short.